Was Ralph Hinckley really the greatest American hero? Yes, because he was the only one. No, really, on television, he was the only superhero on the air for pretty much the entire 80s. Now, I'm not talking about superhero programming in general. You still had a pretty thriving superhero presence in the form of TV movies and cartoons. And sci-fi series like Misfits of Science and Automan often get categorized into that genre. But a live-action, successful Emmy Award-winning series with an unambiguous superhero as the main character, that distinction goes exclusively to the guy in the red-orange tights. This is the greatest American hero from a certain point of review. The pilot begins with a somewhat on-the-nose allegory with a group of armed skinheads chasing a black man through the worst part of Star Trek Nemesis. I'm not really sure if the racial implications were intended here, but it was definitely misleading, as you'll see later. The black man, who will later learn his name John, accidentally drives into a dune buggy's natural enemy, shallow water.
Hey guys, come on please, man. All I want to do is go back to my car, huh? Look, I don't want any trouble.
Jesus loves you, my friend.
That's terrific news.
Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before.
If you think that's interesting, just wait, because we're never addressing it nor seeing her again. The fate of John, as yet unnamed, is left ambiguous, and the scene cuts to an opening title card and an instrumental of the show's theme song. That theme song. We'll come back to that theme song. But first, we meet our protagonist, Ralph Hinckley, played by William Katt. You may remember William Katt from other great works such as House 4, Baby, those Perry Mason TV movies. Ralph is a high school teacher, specifically a teacher of an especially rowdy special education classroom.
Sounds like cowboy night at the Palomino Club.
Yeah, well, that's special education for you, Ralph. I mean, these kids are in here because they're trouble. They're disrupting the entire high school, you know? We get pencils and notebooks. What we need is riot guns and helmets.
Easy, Joe Clark.
Some of these kids are really smart, Ray. Like Rhonda. You talking about Love Me, Rhonda?
Whoa, first of all, Mr. Windbreaker, that's a teenager you're talking about. And yes, girls who've had sex don't proportionally lose brain power.
I just think I ought to be able to do some good, get them interested, even one. Is that so damned impossible?
Those monsters. That chair must have skidded a whole 3 feet. So, let's see what this group of miscreant delinquent looks like, shall we? These are the monsters he needs to hold at bay with a chair? The cast of Grease 2?
Oh, we was having a discussion about current events. Sort of a recap on yesterday's class, Mr. H.
Hold on a minute. Go back to those opening credits. Isn't that Los Angeles?
Oh, we was having a discussion about current events. Sort of a recap on yesterday's class, Mr. H.
Why do you have a Brooklyn accent?
You're a clown, Tony.
Why do you have a Brooklyn accent? You can tell this class is trouble because they all have their shirts tucked in. Ralph decides to take the kids on a surprise field trip to the desert, presumably to leave the Brooklynites stranded in the middle of nowhere, so they hop on a bus and head on out.
I got no job, I'm broke. I feel like I'm a joke.
Oh yeah, if that song seems out of place and out of time here, that's because it is. I actually thought I was going crazy when doing this review because my much older notes on the series said this song here was Help Me Rhonda. Apparently in the original broadcast it was a cover of the song sung by Joe Scarberry, who we'll actually be talking about later. Presumably they couldn't retain the licensing rights to the pop covers they recorded for the original broadcast, so you'll hear a lot of songs that often seem like they're being broadcast from the future and that don't always fit the situation. Because really, what could be more fitting a song for taking a bunch of New Yorkers on a field trip to the desert than the Beach Boys? While stopping at a diner for lunch, they happen upon Bill Maxwell, played by Robert Culp. A lot of you might just remember Culp from that one Eminem video, but Robert had a long and successful acting career, including westerns like Trackdown, where he played a Texas Ranger, to the hugely popular secret agent series called I Spy, where he definitely starred by himself. And can I just say, Robert Culp is possibly the best thing about this series.
Yeah, she's beautiful. You can't find her IQ with a searchlight. Let's go, Ralph. If I'm out here doing the Maxwell sizzle, you could try to be punctual. Now, where's the counselor? Communicating is real easy, Ralph. I don't need a weekend seminar to teach me how. What you do is open your yap, tell people what to do. If they don't do it fast enough, you bump them, badge them, and bag them, period.
Tony doesn't like the way Bill reacts to the rowdy bunch of kids entering the diner and proceeds to try and start something with Bill.
Hey, you. Yeah, that's right, I'm talking to you. You got a problem or something? You don't like the way I look?
If Bill's the best thing about this show, Tony Villacana is the worst. He's like if Joe Pesci's most famous character is adopted and raised one of the Newsies.
You loaded this guy. It looks like he stole Elliot Ness's wardrobe or something. I don't like the way you look. How about that?
Come on, Tony, let's give this guy the day off, all right?
Hey, what am I, spithead? What am I, spithead? What am I, spithead?
Huh?
This guy looks at me like I'm some kind of bug, some kind of nothing bug, a cockroach.
If you're looking for trouble, you've just come across the West Coast distributor.
Did I mention I love Bill?
Now get this guy cooled out, all right?
If you're gonna run around with the monkeys, you gotta remember to bring the cages. It saves trouble up front.
Yeah, come on.
If he pulls out a knife, you pull out a gun. If he puts one of your men in the hospital, you put one of his in the morgue. If he does this, you do this. Nobody calls the police because America, and Tony sits his poser ass down. Ralph tries to make nice with Bill after the fact, but Bill isn't having it.
Listen, I'm sorry.
That's nice. That makes everything all right, then.
I said I'm sorry. What do you want, a trip to Europe?
Leave me alone, pal. I got my own problems.
So Ralph and the Sweat Hogs are out well into the evening because there was just so much diner to see, and the Magic School Bus starts experiencing engine trouble. Of the explodey kind.
Keep this stuff up. What the hell's going on out here?
Calm down, kids. It's called neutral gear. So Ralph decides to leave the horse shack of the group in charge while he wanders off into the desert to a gas station a mile down the road. He encounters what appears to be a drunk driver and does what any sane, rational person would do in that situation. Stand in its path and wave his arms around like a frickin' idiot.
Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing? Hey!
Turns out the driver is Bill from the diner, and safety-conscious Ralph quickly disarms him. Okay, one of the issues with this pilot and the show in general is people have a tendency to overreact to situations. This was a common trope in 80s TV shows, and especially comedies, and we get a lot of that in this series, especially from the depiction of the general public and the police. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Turns out Bill is an FBI agent, and his car lost power on the road just like the bus, though less explodey and more 3 pints of scotchy.
Just trying to run me down. No, it just went. I don't know what. I couldn't control it. Maybe the steering knuckle broke. I don't know what happened.
There's aliens in this? I love aliens. Yeah, but it is 80s television, so don't get your hopes up too high. Okay, that's not terrible. Okay, that's kind of cool. Ooh. The aliens proceed to communicate with Ralph and Bill in a rather creative way I don't think I've seen before or since.
You
Will not be
harmed.
you.
Will listen. You will
Decide.
Presumably not great English speakers, the aliens have apparently chosen a representative that isn't going to freak them out at all.
Bill? Hello, Bill?
John, is that you?
Bill, I'm in the spaceship. Now, the people here want you and Ralph Hinckley to work for them. They want Mr. Hinckley to accept the gift which contains these unearthly powers.
unearthly powers?
Yes, unearthly. Spaceship?
It's a suit. It will work on Mr. Hinckley, nobody else. There are these instructions. You're supposed to work with him, to tell him what problems that need to be solved. It is up to you whether to accept. If you don't accept, then in 2 weeks the suit will disintegrate.
A suit? I don't need a suit. I got plenty of suits.
That's because Ralph gets his suits from Indochine. They're not a sponsor? This is from a pimp store in the mall? John then beams down from the ship to leave the suit in the trunk and reveals he's looking very Swiss cheese-like. It turns out the guy running from the Mr. Cleans at the beginning of the episode was Bill's partner, who appears decidedly dead.
I'm dead.
See?
Been dead for 6 hours. The ship picked me up out there afterwards. I'm leaving with them. It's a new life for me.
Didn't you just say you were...
Nice working with you, Bill.
You have been, and always will be, my friend. John leaves with the aliens to make their 12 a.m. with Richard Dreyfuss, and Bill and Ralph are left trying to process everything that just happened, which goes about as well as you'd expect when two strangers stranded in the desert experience their first zombie alien abduction.
He was dead.
I noticed.
Bill basically decides that he wants nothing to do with what just happened and abandons Ralph in the middle of the desert with his space briefcase. And right here is the critical plot point that defines this whole series. Another pop song. No, wait, not the pop song, but this moment where Ralph reviews an instruction booklet tucked inside the side of the briefcase and immediately drops it. That's right, the instructions to unearthly power were less securely fastened than a Galaxy Note stylus. Where is my stylus? This is the entire premise behind The Greatest American Hero, because the aliens weren't lying when they said unearthly power. This suit can apparently do anything. Ralph just isn't sure what that is. Like at all. So Ralph reunites with his students just before Kaneki and Boom Boom try to relight the pilot and find the vehicle's power is now working. Apparently the aliens specifically wanted Ralph and Bill and used this opportunity to get them to meet and make contact. How? I don't know. Alien stuff. We find out later in the series that the aliens can actually do all kinds of things with the fabric of reality. There's this really kind of unnecessary subplot with Rhonda, who seems to be sweet on Ralph, while Ralph tries to let her down easy.
Rhonda, I know you think that there's something going between us, but I'm just your teacher.
It would probably feel more inappropriate if Rhonda wasn't 26, but I digress. This leads to the subplot with the jealous Tony, where he and Ralph are going to duke it out in the gym the next day, which seems like a wasted opportunity, but we'll get back to that too. At this point, we're finally given some insight into the skinheads from the intro, but only in as much that their influence goes all the way up to Adam Taft, the Vice President of the United States.
Well, it's just that the policies are set by the president, and I think
I had hoped that it wouldn't be necessary to review your career. But if you recall, I got you the vice presidential nomination. I bought it 2 years ago when you were nothing governor from a nowhere state.
Decidedly vague. It's Wyoming. Apparently the VP is someone who's been in this group's pocket for some time and are looking to put him into the presidency. We also find out Ralph has a kid named Kevin, but literally no one cares about that because we want to see the super suit.
Please. Did you look at this thing? It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Ralph.
Trust me, this is not the last Superman reference we're going to get in this episode. Ralph then gets a call from Pam Davidson, played by Connie Selica, the greatest superhero girlfriend who has ever lived.
What's up?
Well, tomorrow is about the most important day in this whole custody suit, so dress for the occasion.
Oh yeah, she's also his attorney, handling a bitter custody battle between him and his ex. Look, don't think about the ethics. It's 80s television. Cops used to investigate their own murders. Pam assures Ralph that they have a pretty strong case, despite the fact that his ex-wife, Alicia, is now a successful model. She just wants to make sure he makes it to the courthouse by 12 tomorrow.
Are you okay, hon? You sound wasted.
I'll see you tomorrow.
I love you too. Good night.
Man to Super Friends, Priority 1 emergency.
There's nothing to worry about. I should be able to neutralize it with my super breath.
Told you. Ralph finally tries on the suit the next morning, and to the show's credit, there's never this perception that his suit isn't supposed to be kind of silly looking. In fact, sometimes the show leans a little too hard into that trope. But it's still kind of great, maybe even because of the silliness. Ralph doesn't do any testing of the suit's abilities here because we have to have our obligatory 1980s insufferable child for no real reason moment of comedy. We're gonna skip over this part because this kind of annoying child archetype has always upset me as being very unrealistic and more aggravating than funny. I always got the sense that 80s writers basically hated kids and made sure to write them as unlikable as possible. Ralph takes another phone call from Pam, but conveniently in that moment, he's confronted by a powerful monologue that really makes him think about the responsibility of those bestowed with great power.
Thanks for calling. Bye.
Are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Superman, Batman and Robin, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
A superhero fourth wall break? Man, those crazy 80s. We get a nice little moment of further characterization here that shows what kind of person Ralph really is.
Listen, honey, this thing with me and Mommy, you know that we both love you and we both want you. And I don't want you to have to choose because that's not fair, but I just thought maybe there's something you'd like to say about it.
Ralph has the worst class of 30-year-olds on the planet, but still thinks it's worth the effort if he can reach just one of them. He's worried about his kid's mental health during this difficult time and gives him an opportunity to have a voice in the matter without putting him on the spot. And all this while in the middle of a tense custody hearing and the knowledge that we were never alone in the universe. Seems like the aliens actually knew what they were doing, picking the right people for the job.
So who's the clown in the upper school bathroom? I think he's in there throwing up.
Well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. Ralph arrives at work to find Bill in the student restroom, and he's not processed the previous night's events well at all.
Ryan Whiskey wants to try some battery acid.
Not the best therapy, no. I've been drunk in 10 years. I couldn't handle last night. I don't believe in that stuff. Whatever it was, poor John walking around dead. We did see it. It was real.
In fairness, Bill does have the added trauma of losing a partner to both the afterlife and the afterlife.
Yeah.
There's something you gotta know about me. I'm by the book. Always have been, always will be. By the book. And it really bends my frame when things get over into the margins.
Into the margins? I'd say we're clear off the page here.
After the initial shock has passed, however, Bill seems to be the only one of the two who fully realizes the implications of what's been placed in their lap, and he's eager to actually start getting to work. Ralph, not so much.
Wait a minute, just wait a second. We got a little problem here, you and me. We got this suit or whatever that we're supposed to Use? Is that the way you read it?
I'm supposed to use. It's a small point, but I think a pertinent one.
Well, what I got here, what you don't got, Mr. Hinckley, is a dead partner.
Sorta.
If you will recall, somebody shot him full of holes, which is a definite no-no in my book. That's the same one I mentioned a moment ago, the one I go by.
These two guys come from two very different walks of life, so it's not a terrible surprise they don't get along. Bill is a curmudgeonly old lawman operating from a sense of duty and wants justice for his partner. Ralph is just a good guy trying to live his life, who didn't ask to be handed power and the weight of responsibility that brings. Their respective views of the world have been turned upside down, and now they've got to come to grips with cards they've been handed. But before that happens, they've got one major obstacle to overcome. Bill's ego.
First of all, I run a show. You got any problem with that?
Yeah, a little one. Maybe a big one.
Tough. You take your instructions from me, we figure out a best guess scenario on what's going on, work from that. At least until I find whoever was nailed John, okay? Did you read the manual yet, the instructions?
This is gonna go over well. Ralph explains how he lost the instructions in a mile walk somewhere in the middle of the desert, which doesn't do much to inspire Bill in Ralph's competence.
Yeah, really got me a live one here. Oh, boy.
Look, I gotta go. Listen, you call me in a couple of days. If I figure out how to make it work, we can meet then.
We'll figure it out now, Butterfingers. And the next time I tell you something, the only thing I want to hear out of you is yes, sir, or how soon. That's all. That's it. That's the basic drill.
But while Ralph might be mild-mannered, he's no pushover.
I'm the guy with the suit, Mr. Maxwell. You give me any problems, I'm gonna turn you into 170 pounds of dog chow. Now, you call me in a couple of days. That's the drill.
This has been the part of the show that you're actually interested in. And now back to our regularly scheduled, boring subplot. So Ralph and Fran Drescher's more annoying younger brother have their scheduled bout, where Tony demonstrates that he really is the turd blossom he pretends to be. The bout ends in a draw.
No, Tony. You got too much for me.
Hey, Mr. H. Hinckley. Yeah, I'm sorry about that late shot. You know, I ain't used to fighting the rules. It was like a reflex.
I'm used to attacking the mooks from behind so they don't do the baba boo. Shut the hell up.
Accept your apology. Hey, I wasn't apologizing. I was like, explaining.
You literally said you were sorry 2 seconds ago. Tony confesses that Ralph has earned his respect, but still seems to think Ralph is interested in Rhonda. Ralph points out that he's just trying to teach her, and that maybe Tony should try showing her some of that same respect.
Maybe she needs some of that respect you're talking about. You ever think about that?
Hey, man, she's just a girl, you know what I mean?
I hate you.
Yeah, well, listen, she's got feelings just like you, and all you guys, you treat her like she's some kind of a pushover.
Really, even the teachers in this school treat Rhonda like garbage.
She likes you.
She likes me because I treat her with respect, that's all. Why don't you try that?
Okay, maybe this subplot isn't completely unnecessary. In fact, I think they did a good job further establishing Ralph's character here, in so much as they show how he respects men and women equally. But I think the thing they failed to do with the boxing match was foreshadow how Ralph reacts under pressures of physical confrontation. If Ralph has the upper hand on someone, how does he react to that kind of advantage? Sure, they demonstrated that in the heat of a conflict, he doesn't lose his temper, but I really wanted to see Tony punched in the face a lot more.
Listen, send us some flowers. I gotta go.
Flowers? Hey, I ain't no Cary Grant.
A lot more. Ralph heads off for his custody hearing only to encounter detrimental delays and no way to communicate that to the court because, you know, the 80s. So what's a desperate guy with a super suit in the back of his station wagon to do?
Boy, I hate this. I really hate this. Jeez, it's a toilet putting on long underwear. Where's my life going?
Yeah, that brings back memories.
Jerry, how many times does Daddy have to tell you? We have to go and not wait until it's too...
Oh, hi.
Mark. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know the bathroom was in use.
Here we learn about the divide between 80s adults and 80s children. 80s children know what a supersuit is and why it's fine, nay cool even, whereas 80s adults are still suffering from the trauma of the Great Garfield Massacre of '76.
I know this seems really nuts.
No it doesn't.
See, what I'm doing here is...
Doesn't need explanation.
I'm late for a court appearance.
None of my business, and you aren't harming anyone.
No, it's all right. No, don't touch us. Look, I don't know what you want to do with us. We're leaving.
Yeah, remember how I mentioned people in Ralph's world overreact to things? This is just the beginning.
My boy and I aren't safe. Do you want to do something about this?
Let's hope this guy never wanders into a Comic-Con or his nervous breakdown will literally turn him into Jared Leto. Ralph dips into an alley and makes several failed attempts to see if his suit works the way it looks like it should work, but to no effect. But Jerry, who has the worst dad in the world, has apparently slipped away from his caring father and offers Ralph some advice only a kid from the 80s could offer.
You're not doing it right.
Huh?
You're not doing it right. You gotta run like 3 steps and jump with your hands out in front of you.
I guess it stands to reason that an advanced alien species would be like, there's only one Reeves and his name was George, with an S.
3 steps, huh?
You jump hard, like off a diving board. You're not very good at this.
Tell me about it, kid.
But it turns out the aliens must have been literal baby boomers because the advice works and Ralph takes to the air. It goes fine. Remember that time Ralph almost killed a homeless person in the series pilot? Yeah, neither did I. And this scene pretty much encapsulates the tone of the entire series. Ralph only has a vague impression of what his suit can actually do, but with no instructions on how to do that, anytime he figures out how one power works, it's pretty much chaos. Little did Ralph know, but a private detective had been following him this whole time, waiting to catch him in a compromising situation because his ex is apparently absolute trash. Unconscious on the ground in a bright orange-red suit strikes him as a perfect opportunity. Now, these photos aren't exactly compromising even without any context. In the real world, in the city Ralph lives in, this is tantamount to driving around in a windowless van with the NAMBLA logo painted on the sides. Jerry's dad had called the police, and they showed up, for some reason, with actual sirens, only to find Ralph laying on the ground with the wind knocked out of him. Somehow completely disinterested in the sentient porn stash with the Polaroid hunched over an unconscious person, the police focus their attention on the thing that really matters.
Well, we got another trendsetter here. Where do we get these guys?
Having dropped his ID with his suit and unable to convince the police that not doing anything illegal is not illegal, the police threaten Ralph with physical violence if he doesn't go with them to get a psych evaluation. Ralph just wants to get to his kid's custody hearing.
Please don't do this. This can go down easy, or it can go down hard, Mr. Hinckley. Either way, it's okay with us.
Oh, so it is LA. Seriously, what happened in this town? Did Richmond Valentine do that thing he did in the church at LA Comic-Con that year? Why are you people so triggered by cosplay? Not realizing that he could, quite possibly, turn both these cops into the aforementioned dog chow, Ralph complies without a fight. Fortunately for Ralph, the hospital reacts far more reasonably by immediately strapping a non-violent man suspected of having a concussion to a bed.
These straps have been stress tested at 5,000 pounds.
Who said that? But more importantly, why did you say that? It's just kind of a weird thing to say, really. Meanwhile, across town, the world's most aggressive Mormons have showed up to Bill's apartment. If you're keeping track, Ralph has demonstrated the ability of flight, super strength, and invulnerability at this point, albeit we only got glimpses of those last two. But Bill's life being in jeopardy is about to trigger one of Ralph's more unique abilities, one that further sets him apart from other Superman archetypes.
Hi, I'm a friend of Jesus.
Yeah. What's up?
Could I come in for a second? I'd like to tell you about our good work.
Oh, that's why we needed to know how much weight those straps were stress tested at, I guess. Ralph had the hospital call Pam, who catches Ralph in his pajamas inspecting the drywall, and her reaction is actually incredibly normal considering the circumstances. Like really, despite some initial shock, she actually bothers to communicate to Ralph about the PI his ex hired and the photos he brought to court.
I assume there's some sort of rational explanation.
Okay, you are the best girlfriend who's ever lived.
Are you all right? You look ridiculous.
Well, thank you. Gee, I'm glad you like the outfit. It's quite a showstopper, isn't it?
But Ralph's vision still hasn't subsided.
You guys are Gabriel's army, aren't you? You killed my partner, John Mackey.
Agent Mackey found his salvation.
Where are you taking me?
To your salvation.
Salvation? Salvation?
Can't you see that?
No, Ralph's vision is a projection only he can see and hear.
Looks like Sand Canyon Highway.
Oh, really? Is it a painting of the highway?
Where's your car?
It's in the parking lot.
I'd fly, but I haven't quite got the hang of it yet.
And like I said, considering all the information Pam has at the moment, her reaction to Ralph's craziness is really quite reasonable. She has no idea how he got here or why he's wearing an orange-red supersuit, and he's talking about flying and seeing highways on the wall. Of course she'd be concerned and think something has gone wrong, but she's not reacting to the situation with the abject terror that everyone else seems to convey.
I think you're very sick. I don't know why or how it could have happened so quickly. But maybe it was the strain of Alicia coming back and filing for custody of Kevin or something. I don't know. But whatever it is, we've got to get you straight in one big hurry. You see, if the judge gets his hands on this, you can forget ever keeping Kevin or retaining custody.
I think we firmly established that I love Pam. As a person, frustrated, Ralph doesn't want to deal with this at the moment and is more concerned with saving Bill's life, who Pam hasn't met yet. And just like that, Ralph finally puts it together that his suit should be able to help him negotiate his way out of this situation. I guess Pam is used to seeing Ralph flying Walinda staff because she doesn't really seem to process that Ralph is getting by security pretty easily. But I'm going to let that slide because Connie Celica.
Ralph, give me those keys right now. I'm not fooling. If you think I'm going to let you drive off, that's you.
Anyone in any kind of security position in 80s television had a real Chumbawamba confidence about their job. Now that Ralph and Pam are truly alone, a confused and befuddled Pam begs Ralph for an explanation.
What on earth is going on?
If I told you, you'd sign my commitment form.
Oh, try me. I have a very broad mind.
Won't be broad enough, believe me.
Ralph, I dearly care about you. I love you.
Aww.
I wouldn't tell you this now, but I think I have a heavy emotional stake in your future.
Aww.
That's terrific, Pam. And I feel the same way about you. I really do. I mean, after this custody thing was over...
Ralph, talk to me, please.
Well, I was gonna...
We'll deal with it together, whatever it is.
And so Ralph proceeds to tell Pam everything that happened in the last 24 hours. The aliens, the spaceship, the zombie FBI agent, the suit, everything. And her reaction is... That's right, an obscure rock ballad. That song is not even mood music. That's literally the sound your soul makes when it leaves your body. Ralph is continuing to see visions of Bill's location in the rearview mirror, which is what leads Ralph to the location of Gabriel's army. Oh yeah, you probably missed that in all the one time it was mentioned. The skinheads are actually members of some kind of religious cult called Gabriel's Army.
You seem to have some interest in my desert property. Who are you? Well, let's just say I'm somebody you should try very hard to please. Take him to vacation.
More little green men?
This place belongs to Nelson Corey.
Oh, no.
Why would one of the richest men in the world want to kidnap Bill Maxwell?
A wealthy man who's turned to evil? Don't be so capitalism.
Mackey said something terrible was going to happen. He told Bill that we had to accept the responsibility. Pam, I want you to take the car, drive down the road, and wait for me. If I'm not back in 45 minutes, you call the police.
But Pam is still justifiably terrified that Ralph is not firing on all thrusters.
You hit your head. You're not thinking straight.
Are you going to help me or not?
And yet another reason why I love Pam so much. She genuinely trusts Ralph, and something is telling her to listen to him, even if she has serious doubts.
Look at it this way. You're one step ahead of Lois Lane. She never found out who Clark Kent really was.
That's the same face Warner Brothers gave ABC when they saw this show and sued them for copyright infringement. If you're wondering how that lawsuit went, the judge actually said, and I quote, "In the genre of superheroes, Hinckley follows Superman as, in the genre of detectives, Inspector Clouseau follows Sherlock Holmes."
My parents are coming in from Michigan next week to meet you. Let's try a little suit and a Lois Lane joke's on them. They're gonna love it.
That was also Warner Brothers' reaction to the judgment. Ralph gets spotted by Pitbull's army, and in what becomes a common theme of Season 1, he accidentally discovers yet another superpower. That he can't control. While inside Nelson Corey's mansion, Les Luthor tries to intimidate Maxwell into telling him how much he knows and what he's told the FBI. Little does he realize that he's up against forces of power he can't possibly imagine. Bill's ego.
You are about as religious as a Las Vegas nightclub.
It won't help you to antagonize us. It'll be all over by 8 tonight. We'll be in control.
Control of what?
You'll find out when the rest of the world is. That is, if you're still among the living.
You make me sick. Bunch of chicken, hotshot political terrorists hiding out, trying to fake some kind of religion while you're stashing away the goodies, the machine guns and the grenades. Right now we got this wacko Nelson Corey with the big G's behind you. What's that all about? What do you got?
The situation is getting tense, perhaps even being the trigger for Ralph's psychic powers yet again, helping him pinpoint Bill's precise location. It's time to find out what this suit can really do. In fairness to Ralph, he literally doesn't know his own strength yet, so it would probably be difficult to gauge wall bursting on your first try. That guy should be dead. If at this point you're wondering why Ralph just tosses people around by the scruff of their necks and their belt buckles, well, the in-universe explanation is likely because Ralph doesn't want to punch a hole in people's faces, since he literally doesn't know his own strength yet. But out of universe, it's because this is how super strength was usually expressed on TV at the time. Part of me thinks this has something to do with the fact that all these super shows were doing prime time with an audience that was going to have a lot of kids, and somebody somewhere seemed to think a superpowered person hitting someone was a bad example. Even though all the other shows kids watched that featured normies had a metric ton of punching, standards and practices worked in mysterious ways.
He needs a key. Look at you in long johns and a cape.
Ralph frees Bill, and the two meet up with Pam, who wasn't quite looking when he flies Bill over the gate. They make their escape, and Nelson Corey receives word that their plan has been compromised and that they need to move up their timetable.
Push the button on LA now. Notify the others that we're in motion. Phase 1. 5 hours to confrontation.
Meanwhile, Bill marvels over seeing the suit in action, something Pam still hasn't witnessed.
My head feels like 20 pounds of silly putty. Next time we go flying together, try not to make me your landing pad, please.
So, you guys went flying.
Oh yeah, Pam, meet Bill.
What attorney? You're too pretty.
Oh boy.
And what is your interest in this enterprise, Miss Davidson?
Oh, I'm just here to do the Lois Lane jokes. Other than that, I really am an attorney.
And something of a feminist, I bet.
Bill likes to get his labels on secure so he won't lose his way during any semi-complicated discussion.
If it wasn't obvious, the dynamic between these three is hardly what I would call healthy. Bill thinks the suit is fantastic, Ralph thinks it's a burden, and Pam thinks they're both crazy. And there's still one remaining superpower that Ralph is going to need to get control of before they can ever move forward in a functional way. Bill's ego.
I'll tell you one thing if you want to know. Our little green guys, whoever they are, made one mistake. They gave the suit to the wrong guy. I've been in this game for 20 years. And when the chips go down, they give you the pigskin and old Maxwell gets the shovel. Again. What am I doing hooked up with you? We couldn't agree on how to make Kool-Aid.
You mean you don't add 10 cups of sugar to a pitcher that hasn't been washed or used for anything else in 5 years?
All I need right now is another $2 haircut telling me where to go and how high to jump.
Shut up!
At this point, Pam has heard enough. She's been focused on helping Ralph get custody of his son, and she's completely perplexed and frustrated over conversations of aliens and superpowers and casual misogyny.
I'm struggling to get you a postponement on the custody case. And all you can think of are some earth shoes you lost when you went flying. And you, Mr. Maxworth.
Maxwell, and you're gorgeous when you're mad, sweetheart.
I mean, she is, but this is not the time to be bringing that up. Again, Pam's frustration is completely fair considering how fast everything has been happening today. So Ralph decides to do the one thing that superheroes, even to this day, seemingly never do to their girlfriends unless they're about to die, get broken up with, get married, or get exposed. Show her the damn superpower.
Hold it! No offense, kid. You can make some decisions. What are you doing?
Okay, tired woman trope or not, I gotta give her that one. So while Ralph tries to help Pam come to terms with the reality of aliens and superpowers and how this is going to dramatically impact their reality, Bill starts postulating the potential of the supersuit in true American fashion. Military intervention.
Try this scenario. Once my boy here gets the hang of the flying, he could come right in, across the Adriatic, across Turkey, and straight in to the Leningrad Missile Complex. Raise hell with that program over there. Take an afternoon off, weekend. Knock out a nuke sub. Or the radar complex at Stalingrad. How about that? This is an outstanding military
Pam, are you all right?
potential we got here.
I guess, except I have this droning in my ear.
Pam's concern is that this new wrinkle will ruin their future together, as she has no intention of sitting on the sidelines while Ralph creates potential international incidents. But for once, Bill makes a fair point that they have a more pressing concern in the form of Nelson Corey and Vin Diesel's army. What? They're like a family.
Okay, go ahead.
Wait a minute, slow down. I'm still trying to adjust to all this.
You cannot step off a roller coaster, honey, just because it's going too fast.
He's right. We're in this. We have to do something.
Whoa. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this not our very first point of agreement on anything?
And thus, the seeds of cooperation are sown. So the team regroups at Ralph's place, giving Ralph a chance to don something more socially acceptable, especially in this town. And the three begin to try and work out a plan. However, 8 o'clock or 5 hours, I don't know, maybe Ralph got off work early. But whatever time rolls around and Nelson Corey's plans have already gone into action. As it turns out, Corey's plan was to stage sudden and violent unrest in poorer areas of LA. Areas that were apparently a point of contention between him and the vice president over the lack of federal funding and attention. This unrest will, of course, cause the president to immediately come visit. Actually, he'll be taking a helicopter tour over the affected areas, which is still kind of far-fetched. This is when the Scooby Gang starts to put things together.
Have you two noticed how much of Adam Taft we've been seeing on TV lately? It's almost as if someone were trying to redesign his image.
Nelson Corey. He put a whole lot of dough into Taft in the past. Wanted to run him for president. Didn't work out. It's in his eyes-only file at the Bureau.
So the team sets out to contact Shackelford, the colonel running the local military base, to see if they can warn the president in the event that his safety is in jeopardy. But first...
That's Rhonda.
Oh no.
Hey, Rhonda, what do you want us here for anyway?
Oh God, you're not.
Doesn't it mean anything to you, Tony, that he's trusting us with his own kid?
It means that Kevin is only going to be in 4 more episodes. So Ralph leaves Kevin with the Mutt Williams version of Fonzie and his gang, and the 3 head off to military base to bring what they have to Colonel Shackelford, who squares their intel with some of his own.
Normally, I'd say this is nuts, but it does dovetail with some G2 of my own. We've taken 2 members of Gabriel's army, and we questioned him under pentothal. We didn't get as much as we'd hoped. But we do suspect that this riot was only phase 1 of a larger plan. We better warn the president. He's already in L.A. We've got an hour and 15 minutes. We'll take the staff car.
What could go wrong?
Just sit quiet, all of you.
Oh, that's right. The plot twist. Shackelford reveals he and his aide are part of Gabriel's shirt stretchers, while Ralph reveals to Bill that he learned a thing or two from the adventures of Superman. The 3 are taken directly to Nelson Corey, where from his secret underground lair inside a broom closet, he plans on taking the presidency. Ralph flexes his bona fides in true Ralph Hinckley fashion.
You'll never get away with it.
And you're,
Ralph Hinckley.
a Fed? Who does he work?
I work for Whitney High. I'm a special ed teacher.
Hey, don't laugh. Even before the suit, Ralph was putting the kibosh on the city's most treacherous chair sliders. Ralph waits until they're locked up and alone to strip down to his red underwear, while Corey makes Taft move his plan to the next phase.
Sir, it's Adam. I'm with Nelson Corey at his house. I'd like to go with you when you make a tour of the area. Yes, sir. If you could land here and pick me up, I'd appreciate it.
Could we stop by a Sonic on the way?
I'll land here in 25 minutes and pick me up.
Phase 3 now. All right. As soon as he lands, he and his party will be taken prisoner. They'll immediately be loaded back on the aircraft. Colonel Shackelford, you'll pilot it out over the ocean. According to plan, you'll disable it, bail out. And then we have a brand new president. And somebody else will be in the catbird seat.
And now, 3 guards walking into a dark room while wearing sunglasses. Ralph promptly mops the floor with them, ironic, and Bill suggests Ralph wreak havoc to draw the attention of the authorities, while he and Pam go after Shackelford and Corey. Ralph isn't too keen on this plan, and Bill asks if he's got a better one. Pam points out what should be obvious to both of them.
Somebody ought to keep the president from landing.
She's got a good point there, Bill.
That's gotta be up to you. Buzz him or something, anything.
Buzz him. You mean fly up in that helicopter?
Yeah.
Listen, man, I am Captain Crash. I navigate like I was hit with a can of raid. This suit belongs in the Smithsonian. How am I gonna buzz that chopper?
I don't know. I don't have the instructions. No, it's up to you.
And here we get to that standard crossroads moment for any superhero, where they have to decide if they're going to answer the call to heroism using the tools they've been given, whether they're comfortable with those tools or not. Ralph decides to face his fears and handle the situation with as much dignity and grace as he can muster. I'm joking. He screams like a Yes, opening fire in the vicinity of Marine One will definitely keep the president from leaving.
Get out of here, dummy!
Another one of my favorite bad guy tropes of the 80s was their immediate ability to cope with bizarre circumstances.
Don't let him get away!
I admire you because you never give up.
The light! Go for the light!
Ralph successfully shoe flies Marine One away, effectively saving the president from assassination. But 80s bad guys, man, they always hold out hope. Now that Ralph has Gabriel's army sufficiently intimidated, Bill and Pam are easily able to get the drop on Corey with little resistance. And as per usual in 80s television, the police can be heard arriving just in time to do the final roundups and arrests. Not wanting to have to explain the guy in his pajamas, Ralph makes a hasty retreat. He grabs another spotlight because stock footage and takes to the sky.
Look at him.
And while Ralph gets a moment to focus on flying without sheer panic, we get to hear what will be the opening theme to the rest of the series, Joe Scarberry singing Believe It or Not.
Suddenly I'm up on top of the world. It should have been somebody else. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free. Flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
This song was so well received that it entered the Billboard 100 and peaked at number 2, just behind Diana Ross and Lionel Richie's Endless Love. And it shows up in pop culture every so often ever since. If you've never really listened to the song in context, I suggest giving the full version a listen, even if it isn't really in your genre. In my opinion, it's up there with the great iconic superhero theme songs of all time. We cap the pilot off with Bill having a clandestine meeting with Pam and Ralph for reasons nobody, not even Pam and Ralph, understand.
What are you doing? You're not supposed to honk the horn. Remember I said? Security hookup, lights only. Kid, you really are hopeless.
Look, Bill, can we cut the cloak and dagger stuff?
Understandably, Bill wants to keep the suit under wraps, and they just got lucky that no one is going to believe a bunch of jailed cultists when they say they saw a guy in a costume flying around. But there's still one elephant in the room that's going to have to be addressed before they can function together as a cohesive unit. Bill's ego.
What I'm trying to say is we gotta start running this thing my way. That's it. I call it. I run it. We start running a squeaky, clean operation, okay? Some scenarios here.
Come on, Bill. Let's not have any scenarios.
Bill thinks Ralph should quit his job and convert to this superhero thing full time, apparently under the impression that school teachers have Swiss bank accounts somewhere.
Look, Bill, I'm very tired. And quite frankly, I don't know if I want to let you call the shots.
Well, kid, that is abundantly clear to me. But if I'm not supposed to run this show, then why did our friends from the Twilight Zone put me aboard?
Comic relief?
I'm trying to tell you I agree with you. I would have much preferred to be the glory guy, the guy with the magic suit. But it didn't work out that way, so I'm just going to have to settle for being the brains of this outfit.
Bill isn't entirely wrong here. He just doesn't have the humility to express it properly. He's trying to process his place on the team here and is mistakenly thinking the aliens mean to put him in charge, when what they needed him for was his access to intel about existential threats to the world. And even with his massive superiority complex, his unwavering commitment to the greater good. Ralph is the tip of the spear, but Bill is the one who can point him in the right direction. And maybe Pam wasn't part of the initial selection. Ralph isn't one of these isolationist brooding heroes who is going to try to live a double life, secret from the woman he loves. Pam's participation in and influence on his life means something to him, and her counsel, both legal and advisory, is part of what makes him the right guy for the job. Likely, this is something the aliens already knew and didn't have to specify.
Without getting mushy, I want you to know that when we started this thing, I thought you were just another 25-cent beach boy. But I got a lot of respect for the way you handle yourself in this caper.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Thank you.
You stood in there, you carried your weight, you charged that helicopter, you got the job done. And you made me, I'm telling you, made me feel good. No. Not good. Proud. That maybe it was really true that you and me could mean something here.
Bill even goes so far as to say he was wrong suggesting that they go after foreign powers, because what could go wrong there, and recommends that they clean up their messes here at home before trying to fix the rest of the worlds. There's a concept, and thus the full premise of the series is firmly cemented. Well, there is one more thing.
Does any of this feel familiar to you, Bill?
You have done
Well,
we
are satisfied.
you should
Try.
power
Uh,
invisible.
Good luck.
Powers of invisibility? What? What? How do you do it? What powers of invisibility? I lost the instruction book. Wait, don't go.
Now that we have our full premise set, let's take a really brief look at the overall series and how things developed. We're not going to go through every single episode of 3 seasons, but there's some highlights I want to cover and maybe even get you interested in checking the series out for yourself. Episode 3, Here's Looking at You, Kid, is of particular note because of certain ongoing concepts first introduced in this episode, not the least of which is Ralph discovering another superpower. This episode continues an ongoing struggle between Ralph and Bill over how much of Ralph's personal life should take priority over the threats Bill continually comes to him with.
It's always top priority with you, Bill.
Okay, how's this? Top secret U.S. government gun sight being tested at Beller Aircraft gets ripped off. It was a prototype, one of a kind.
Top secret.
This little baby can hit a beer can from 5 miles out. That's the truth. Of course, this may not seem terribly important to you compared to the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Davidson are here from East Dog Breath, Nebraska to see who's making nicey on that little girl.
They're from Minnesota, and Mr. Davidson happens to be the mayor of Deer Lick Falls.
The mayor? Oh, well, then they'll have an honor guard for him at the airport. They won't even miss you.
Also introduced in this episode is a portable voice-activated walkie-talkie, which they use as Ralph attempts to track down the stolen fighter jet that had the top-secret prototype targeting system. Ralph uses his psychometry, or what he calls vibes power, intentionally for the first time, rather than just reacting to unprompted images. And Bill, who apparently grew up on comic books, surmises that the suit has a broad range of powers, including
telekinesis.
Since Ralph doesn't want to kill anybody, and they will be going up against all manner of international criminals and murderers in their endeavors, Bill suggests that Ralph look into developing his telekinesis here and now to help facilitate that.
All right, well, I'm going to come at you. All you have to do is give me a little mental push. Stop me. Okay? Try not to knock me down. You have to push, Ralph. You understand? Push hard. Ralph?
What happened? Where am I, Bill? What happened? Can you hear me, Bill?
Yeah, sure, kid. I can hear you. Come on now, just don't panic.
Don't panic. Oh, my God, I'm not here, Bill. I'm invisible.
Well, this is gonna be okay. We shouldn't overreact to this.
What am I gonna do?
And here, again, we see why the aliens created what would otherwise seem like an imbalance of personalities. Ralph panics every time something goes awry, whereas Bill sees the untapped potential once he learns how to control it. Conversely, Bill is perhaps a little too ready to rain hellfire on the nation's adversaries, while Ralph is seeing things more short-term and how this is going to impact his life. While sometimes adversarial, the two create a balance that often keeps the other in check.
You have absolutely no conception of what it's like, Bill. I feel like Claude Rains in the old movie The Invisible Man. He used to go around wrapped in bandages so nobody'd know he wasn't there. It drove him crazy.
We also got some advantages here.
Well, it's driving me crazy, too.
Yeah, we can really use this thing.
Use it.
That gun sight is vital to the defense of your country, Ralph. Now, quit crying and think. The guys that stole it have no loyalty to the US of A or anybody else. They're gonna sell it to whoever pays them the biggest bucks.
How can you even think about that when I'm sitting here with air blowing through me, huh?
That gun sight is one of the most devastating weapons ever devised, Ralph. You want the Ruskies to get it?
Okay. Outside.
Imagine living in a major city where even the most mundane behavior gets you pulled out of the car by the police. Oh.
That site's going under the hammer in 15 minutes and you're taking a bus ride? What's the matter with you? Don't you realize?
Take your seats. Please, everybody take your seats.
There's something wrong with all of you. The introduction of invisibility here helps support the idea that Bill and Ralph are a clandestine operation and really need to be in order for the show to work. Ralph could easily just punch holes in everyone and everything, but their goal is to bring those threatening the security of the country to justice. Also, another interesting nugget about this episode, which you may have heard of before, is this is where they first overdubbed the use of Ralph's last name of Hinckley with the name Hanley, because television execs have been stupid for a long time. Over the course of the series, Ralph learns he has a number of other abilities which some might consider make him overpowered, provided he actually could control any of it, including things like telekinesis, a very visceral form of precognition, shrinking, even super breath. Ralph is never shown to have any kind of kryptonite allegory, with his main weakness really being utter confusion. But one vulnerability akin to the Man of Steel he does encounter is in Season 2, Episode 6, where Ralph has a run-in with the supernatural.
Ralph, you okay? Oh, my back. Oh, man. Oh, listen. We gotta get you to a hospital. What happened to you?
Two of my personal favorite episodes are Season 2, Episode 4, Hog Wild, the obligatory biker gang episode of every 80s action series, where the Road Hogs learn about Ralph's abilities and hold Bill hostage in an attempt to manipulate Ralph into taking revenge against a small town.
And remember, when you land, tuck up your legs and roll.
And the Season 3 premiere, Divorce Venusian Style, where the aliens return, giving Ralph and Bill the backstory on why they made the suit to begin with, and giving Ralph a brand new instruction booklet. Some people might hold the special effects, the chronically reused stock footage of Ralph flying, and the very obvious stunt double in a clown wig against the series. A lot of that is just a consequence of 80s television limitation and budget and structure. But I think it's a big part of the series' charm because, after all, why would an 80s special effects-laden series look much different? The series' official finale is actually an odd case. It was originally filmed 3 years after the series was canceled as the pilot to a revival series called The Greatest American Heroine. Apparently, the whole clandestine operation thing was actually a condition of using the suit. And when Ralph becomes an accidental international celebrity, the aliens tell him he has to give the suit to someone else. And the memory of him having ever been a hero will be erased from the public's mind. Ralph settles on yet another schoolteacher, Holly Hathaway, played by Mary Ellen Stewart, who dons the suit under the same conditions as before, with Bill operating as her partner and personal curmudgeon.
Fold the runway! I'm coming in!
Counselor, that is not funny.
She doesn't have the instructions either. For whatever reason, NBC never aired the pilot, so a series never materialized. The pilot retroactively became the final episode of the original series in syndication sets. Interestingly, even where The Greatest American Hero is legally available, this episode isn't always present. We came really close to getting a revival series around 2019, which would have been produced jointly by Fox and ABC, and would have starred Hannah Simone of New Girl fame as Mira, an Indian American woman in some version of the Jammies. I was actually looking forward to this one, but again, for whatever reason, ABC declined to pick the series up. So for now, The Greatest American Hero remains something of an oddity in superhero fiction. It was probably the most successful genre thing on TV that decade. As far as branded superhero live-action shows go, the only other show I can remember or even find reference to from that era was a bizarre piece of fiction called Once a Hero, which is about an actual comic strip hero who crosses over from his dying comic strip into reality, a la Cool World, to try and revive interest in his comic and save his universe. It was canceled after 3 episodes because somebody somewhere decided that a show about a superhero would be far more interesting if they stripped the character of all his powers. As a result, Ralph Hinckley remains the icon of live-action superhero television of the 80s and holds a special place in superhero history. And I think he earned it, and I think it's worth a watch. This has been The Greatest American Hero from a certain point of review.